Okay guys, so let's have a look at the necessary hardware and software for this course. First of all, I want to mention that I'm using a laptop with a 2.3 GHz processor and 8 GB of RAM. But you shouldn't worry, a 2 GHz CPU and 4 GB of RAM should be enough to run the software we need for this course. As for the software setup, I am using Windows 8.1 as my host operating system, on top of which I have GNS3 and VirtualBox installed. Now, as you probably know, GNS3 is a free software and it is used for network emulation. We are going to need GNS3 in the second part of our course. Another thing I should mention is that you have to provide your own copy of Cisco's router operating system, Cisco IOS, in order to load it into GNS3 and emulate network devices. We'll talk more about setting up GNS3 in a dedicated section. Now moving on, VirtualBox is also free to use, and I am using it because it has great integration with GNS3. We're going to see that later on. Inside VirtualBox, we are going to use Debian Linux 7. I think this version is called Wheezy or something like that, funny name anyway. Usually most Linux distributions come with Python and maybe MySQL pre-installed. Debian 7 has both of them available. Also, for the application building part of the course, I strongly recommend using a more advanced text editor because we will work with a lot of code and the Linux default editor does not have a lot of features to help you deal more easily with many lines of code. So I am using Komodo Edit. It is free. It has a lot of cool features like code completion and syntax highlighting, thus making the code easier to read, write, and maintain. But you can use any other software if you don't like Komodo Edit. In the additional section of this lecture, I have included a download link where you can find the installers for the exact same versions of GNS3 and VirtualBox I use, so we will have synchronized versions along the way. I think this would be really helpful. Now you can do this in two ways, the hard way or the easy way. If you feel like a hero and have a lot of time for installing and maybe troubleshooting software and Python additional modules, you can download and install all of them into a virtual machine of your choice. I added a document with links to all of these software resources. On the other hand, if you want to quickly configure your work environment and get down to business with Python, I would really recommend the easy way. This means you should follow the download link attached to this lecture. There you will find three folders. The first folder is called VirtualBox. Download the installation kit from there and run it on your host operating system. The second folder contains the Debian Linux virtual machine zip archive, which is about 2.3 gigabytes. You should download it, unzip it, and run it in VirtualBox. This is where 99% of our work will take place. Later on, we will modify a few settings into VirtualBox to integrate it with the network in GNS3. Thirdly, you will find the GNS3 folder having the GNS3 installer, and also other resources we will use to build our network applications. But we are going to use GNS3 later in the course, so we'll talk more about it at that point. As a side note, if you run into an error while starting the virtual machine in VirtualBox, this is due to some differences between various hardware configurations. If this happens, you should modify the following setting. In the VirtualBox main screen, select the Debian 7 virtual machine, then go to Settings in the upper part of the screen. Go to the System tab, and then check the Enable PAE and X checkbox. Next, start the virtual machine again, and this time it should be booted without any issues. So, having that said, I hope you can easily build your work environment and start handling Python code in the next lecture.